Hey you, have you ever had a neighbor who just had to know everything you were doing? Like they're always peeking over the fence or asking too many questions. Well, get ready because I've got a story that's gonna make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even cheer. Grab a snack, find a cozy spot, and let's dive in. This one's gonna be wild. Oh, and before we start, drop a quick comment below. Where are you watching from today? Maybe you're in a big city, a small town, or somewhere totally different. And if you love crazy stories about neighbors, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more fun like this. Now let me tell you about a guy named Jake Miller. Jake was just a regular dude, the kind of person you'd see walking his dog or mowing his lawn. He lived in a quiet little neighborhood called Sunny Hills, where all the houses looked pretty much the same: neat lawns, white fences, and flowers by the mailboxes. It was the kind of place where kids rode bikes in the street and everyone waved hello. Sounds nice, right? Well, most of the time it was. But Jake was about to find out that not everything in Sunny Hills was as perfect as it seemed. Jake had a hobby that made him super happy. He loved playing with gadgets. Not just any gadgets, but cool ones like robots, remote control cars, and his favorite, a drone. His drone wasn't some big, scary machine. It was small, about the size of a dinner plate, with a tiny camera and a light that could blink red, blue, or green. Jake thought it was the coolest thing ever. He'd fly it around his backyard, making it zoom up high to take pictures of the sunset or swoop low to follow his dog Max as he chased his tail. The drone's light would glow in the dark, and Jake loved how it looked like a little star dancing in the sky. Most of Jake's neighbors thought the drone was pretty awesome. The kids next door would run outside and wave when they saw it flying. "Jake, make it do a flip," they shout, and Jake would laugh and make the drone spin in circles just for them. Even old Mr. Thompson, who lived across the street, would smile and say, "That's a neat toy you got there, Jake." It made Jake feel good, like he was part of the neighborhood. He wasn't trying to cause any trouble. He just wanted to have fun and take cool pictures with his drone. But here, where things start to get interesting. Not everyone in Sunny Hills liked Jake's drone. There was one person who thought it was the worst thing ever. Her name was Karen, and oh boy, Karen was a piece of work. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the president of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. The HOA was a group that made rules for the neighborhood, like what color you could paint your house or how tall your grass could grow. Karen loved being in charge. She walked around with a clipboard, checking everyone's yards to make sure they followed her rules. If your mailbox was a little crooked or your flowers weren't approved, Karen would leave a note on your door. And let me tell you, nobody wanted one of Karen's notes. Karen had short hair that was always super neat, and she wore bright red glasses that made her look like she was always squinting at something. She lived 3 houses down from Jake, in a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Her lawn was perfect, her bushes were trimmed into perfect squares, and she even had a little sign that said, "Welcome to Sunny Hills, keep it tidy." Jake thought it was kind of funny how serious Karen was about everything. But he didn't know just how much trouble she was about to cause. One sunny afternoon, Jake was out in his backyard, flying his drone like usual. The sky was turning pink and orange, and he wanted to get a picture of it from way up high. The drone buzzed happily, its light blinking red as it climbed into the air. Jake was focused on his controller, making sure the drone didn't bump into a tree, when he heard a loud voice. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing with that thing?" Jake looked up, and there was Karen standing by his fence. Her arms were crossed and her face was all scrunched up like she just smelled something bad. Jake smiled, trying to be nice. "Oh hey Karen, I'm just flying my drone, taking some pictures of the sunset. Wanna see?" But Karen didn't want to see. She pointed at the drone like it was a monster. That thing is noisy and that light is annoying. It's probably scaring the birds. You need to stop right now. Jake was confused, noisy. The drone was quieter than a lawnmower and the light was just a little glow. But before he could say anything, Karen kept going. I'm warning you, Jake. The HOA has rules. If you don't stop, I'll make sure you regret it. Jake didn't know what to say. He didn't want to fight with Karen, so he just nodded and brought the drone back down. Okay, Karen, I'll be more careful, he said, but inside he was a little mad. He wasn't hurting anyone. Why was Karen so upset about something so small? Little did Jake know this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't just annoyed about the drone, she was hiding something big. And Jake's drone was about to shine a light on her secret in a way nobody expected. That night, Jake sat on his porch, thinking about what happened. Max, his fluffy brown dog, was curled up next to him, snoring softly. Jake looked up at the stars and wondered why Karen cared so much about his drone. It wasn't like he was flying it over her house or spying on her. He was just having fun, but something about the way Karen acted made him curious. She seemed nervous, like she didn't want anyone looking too closely at her perfect little world. Jake wasn't the kind of guy to start trouble. He liked keeping things peaceful. He'd moved to Sunny Hills a year ago after getting a job fixing computers at a store nearby. He wasn't rich or famous, just a guy who liked his dog, his gadgets, and his quiet life. But he also wasn't the kind of person to let someone push him around for no reason. If Karen was going to make a big deal out of his drone, Jake wanted to know why. The next day, Jake decided to fly his drone again. Not to be mean, but because he loved it and he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. This time he stayed in his backyard, keeping the drone low. The kids next door ran out again, giggling and waving. Jake, make it go high, they called. Jake laughed and let the drone climb a little, its light twinkling in the evening sky. Everything felt normal until he heard Karen's voice again. Jake Miller, I told you to stop. Karen was back, this time standing in the street, her phone in her hand. I'm not kidding. That drone is against the rules and I'm going to report you, Jake sighed. Karen, it's just a toy. I'm not bothering anyone. But Karen shook her head. You're bothering me and that's enough. Then she turned and stomped back to her house, muttering something about calling someone. Jake watched her go, feeling a mix of frustration and curiosity. What was Karen's deal? Why was she so mad about a little drone? Most people in Sunny Hills didn't care. In fact, some of them thought it was cool. So why was Karen acting like Jake was the worst neighbor ever? As the days went on, Jake started to notice little things about Karen. She was always busy, always rushing around with her clipboard or talking on her phone. She'd smile at other neighbors, but when she saw Jake, her smile disappeared. It was like she had it out for him. And the more Jake thought about it, the more he wondered if there was something else going on. Something Karen didn't want anyone to know. Here's a question for you. Have you ever had a neighbor get super mad about something that seemed totally harmless? Maybe they didn't like your music or complained about your bike in the driveway. Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And stick around because Jake's story is about to get way crazier. Want to know the wildest part? Someone in Sunny Hills was hiding a secret that was about to blow up big time. Guess who didn't see it coming? Let's just say Jake's drone was about to change everything. It was a warm Friday evening in Sunny Hills, and Jake Miller was having the best time. He was out in his backyard, flying his favorite toy, a small drone with a tiny camera and a light that blinked red and blue. The drone zipped through the air, quiet as a whisper, catching pictures of the sunset. The sky was all pink and orange, like a big painting, and Jake couldn't stop smiling. Most people in the neighborhood thought his drone was super cool. The kids next door would run out and wave, shouting, "Jake, make it fly higher." Jake would laugh and wave back, feeling like he fit right in. But not everyone was a fan. Oh no, there was one person who thought Jake's drone was the worst thing ever. Her name was Karen, and she wasn't just any neighbor. Karen was the president of the Homeowners Association, or HOA. That meant she made rules for everyone in Sunny Hills. No loud music, no funny decorations on your lawn, no parking your car in the wrong spot. Karen had a rule for everything, and she loved telling people what to do. She'd walk around with a clipboard, checking everyone's houses to make sure they followed her orders. If you broke a rule, Karen would leave a note on your door, and trust me, nobody wanted one of those notes. That night, while Jake was flying his drone, Karen came marching over to his backyard. She didn't walk, she stormed like a thundercloud ready to burst. Her arms were crossed, and she was holding her phone so tight her knuckles were white. "Jake Miller," she shouted, pointing at the drone like it was a monster from outer space. "What do you think you're doing with that thing?" Jake looked up, surprised. He wasn't used to people yelling at him, especially not over something as fun as his drone. He tried to stay calm and flashed a friendly smile. "Hey, Karen," he said, "I'm just taking some pictures of the sunset. The drone's harmless. Want to see how it works?" He thought maybe if he was nice, she'd relax a little. But Karen didn't want to see. She didn't relax at all. Her face turned as red as a tomato, and her eyes got all squinty behind her big red glasses. "Harmless," she snapped. "That thing is loud, and that blinking light is driving everyone crazy. It's disturbing the peace, and I won't stand for it." Jake blinked loud. The drone was quieter than a fan. And the light, it was just a little glow like a firefly. He didn't understand why Karen was so mad. "Karen, it's not bothering anyone," he said, still trying to be polite. "The kids love it. I'm just having fun." But Karen wasn't listening. She took a step closer to the fence and shook her phone at him. "Fun? You think this is fun? I'm calling 911 right now." Jake's jaw dropped. 911, that's what you call when there's a fire or someone's hurt, not for a guy flying a tiny drone in his own backyard. He couldn't believe it. Was she serious? Karen spun around and started tapping on her phone, muttering about rules and troublemakers. Jake just stood there, holding his drone controller, wondering what he'd done to make her so angry. He didn't want to fight with anyone. He liked Sunny Hills. He liked his neighbors, well, most of them. But Karen, she was making it really hard to stay calm. As Karen stomped back to her house, Jake landed his drone and sat on his porch. His dog, Max, trotted over and plopped down next to him, wagging his tail. Jake scratched Max's ears and thought about what just happened. Why was Karen so upset? It wasn't like he was flying the drone over her yard or spying on her. He was just taking pictures of the sky. Something didn't add up. The next morning, things got even weirder. Jake woke up to find a note taped to his front door. It was from Karen, of course. The note said, "Drones are not allowed in Sunny Hills. Stop flying it or you'll be sorry." Jake read it twice, his eyebrows scrunching together. Not allowed. Since when? He'd lived here for a year and nobody ever said anything about drones before. He checked the HOA rulebook, a big boring packet Karen had given everyone. Guess what? There was no rule about drones. Not one word. Jake started to wonder if Karen was just picking on him. Maybe she didn't like him because he was new, or because he didn't go to her boring HOA meetings, or maybe it was something else. Something she didn't want him or anyone to know about. Jake wasn't a nosy guy, but Karen's anger made him curious. Why was she so worried about his drone? What was she afraid of? That afternoon, Jake was outside fixing his bike when he saw Karen again. She was walking down the street, talking on her phone. She didn't see Jake, but he could hear her voice, sharp and fast. "No, nobody knows," she said. "Just keep it quiet, okay?" Jake didn't mean to listen, but those words stuck in his head. Nobody knows, keep it quiet. What was Karen talking about? He watched as she hurried into her house and shut the door quick, like she was hiding from something. Jake went back to his bike, but his mind was racing. Karen was acting strange, stranger than usual. First, she flipped out about his drone, then she left that note. Now she was whispering weird things on her phone. It was like she was scared of something, but what? Jake didn't know yet, but he had a feeling his drone was making her nervous for a reason. The next evening, Jake decided to fly his drone again. He wasn't trying to make Karen mad, he just loved flying it, and he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. He kept it in his backyard, making it float low so it wouldn't bother anyone. But sure enough, Karen was watching. She didn't come to his fence this time, but Jake saw her standing on her porch, staring at him with her arms crossed. Even from far away, he could tell she was fuming. Jake sighed and brought the drone down. He didn't want more trouble, but he also didn't want to let Karen boss him around for no reason. He was starting to think there was more to this than just a blinking light. Something was going on in Sunny Hills, something Karen didn't want anyone to find out. And Jake's drone, it might just be the key to figuring out what she was hiding. The next few days in Sunny Hills were anything but sunny for Jake Miller. Karen, the HOA president, was on a mission to make his life tough. Every time Jake stepped outside, he could feel her eyes on him. She'd stand on her porch or walk by his house, giving him a mean glare. Sometimes she'd mutter under her breath, loud enough for him to hear, "You're breaking HOA rules, Jake." Jake would just nod and keep going, but inside he was getting annoyed. He hadn't done anything wrong. His drone was just a fun toy, not some big problem. But Karen acted like he was the worst neighbor ever. It didn't stop there. Karen took things up a notch. One morning, Jake checked the neighborhood group chat on his phone. It was a place where people shared stuff like "lost cat" or "anyone got a ladder I can borrow." But that day there was a new message from Karen. It said, "Warning, someone is flying a dangerous drone in Sunny Hills. It's loud, annoying, and not safe. We need to stop this." Jake's eyes went wide. Dangerous. His drone was tiny. It couldn't hurt a fly. He scrolled through the replies. Most people didn't seem to care. One neighbor wrote, "I think it's cool." Another said, "Karen, chill out." But a few people agreed with her, saying things like, "Yeah, that light is weird at night." Jake felt his stomach twist. He loved flying his drone, but now he was starting to feel like maybe he was causing trouble. Jake sat on his couch, petting his dog Max and thinking hard. He didn't want to fight with anyone. Sunny Hills was his home and he liked most of his neighbors. But Karen's complaints were making him feel like an outsider. Should he just stop flying his drone? It would be easier. No more glares, no more notes on his door, but then he shook his head. "No way," he said to Max, who wagged his tail. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not gonna let her scare me." Jake wasn't the kind of guy to give up just because someone was being mean. So Jake came up with a plan. He wasn't going to stop flying his drone, but he'd be smarter about it. Instead of just buzzing around for fun, he'd use the drone to keep an eye on things, especially Karen. Not to be sneaky or mean, but because she was acting so strange. Why was she so mad about a little drone? Maybe there was more to it. Jake decided to fly his drone at different times, like early in the morning or late at night, when Karen might not notice. He wanted to see what was going on in Sunny Hills. One night, Jake waited until it was dark. The stars were out and the neighborhood was quiet. He grabbed his drone and controller, slipped into his backyard, and turned the drone's light to a soft green so it wouldn't stand out. The drone lifted off with a gentle hum, floating over his fence and up into the air. Jake steered it carefully, keeping it high enough so nobody would hear it. He wasn't trying to spy. He just wanted to take a quick look around. As the drone glided over Sunny Hills, its camera showed Jake the usual stuff. Houses with glowing windows, kids' bikes left in driveways, and streetlights buzzing softly. But then the drone passed over Karen's house and Jake's eyes got big. Karen's backyard wasn't as perfect as she always bragged about. Behind her shed, where nobody could see from the street, there were piles of boxes. Not just one or two, but lots of them, stacked up like a secret tower. Jake tilted his head. "What's that about?" He whispered to himself. Karen was always so fussy about keeping things neat. Why would she have a messy pile of boxes hidden away? Jake didn't want to stare too long, so he flew the drone back home and landed it. He sat on his porch, scratching his head. Those boxes were weird, but maybe they were nothing. Maybe Karen was just storing stuff. Still, something about it didn't feel right. The way she was so mad about his drone, the way she kept watching him, it all made Jake wonder, what was Karen up to? The next night, Jake flew his drone again. This time he waited until really late, like past midnight. Most of Sunny Hills was asleep and the streets were empty. The drone hummed quietly as it floated over Karen's house. Jake's heart beat a little faster. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he kept the camera on. And then he saw something even stranger. A car pulled up to Karen's driveway, its lights off. A guy got out, wearing a dark hoodie. He looked around like he didn't want anyone to see him, and then he slipped through Karen's gate into her backyard. A minute later, he came back with a box in his arms, tossed it in the car, and sped off. Jake's mouth fell open. "Whoa," he said. He rewound the drone's video and watched it again. Yup, it was real, a sneaky guy taking a box from Karen's yard in the middle of the night. Jake didn't know what it meant, but it was definitely not normal. Why was someone sneaking around Karen's house, and why were there so many boxes? Over the next few days, Jake kept flying his drone, but he was super careful. He didn't want Karen to catch him. Each time he saw a little more. One night he spotted another car pulling up at 2 a.m., dropping off more boxes. Another time he saw Karen herself moving boxes behind the shed, looking over her shoulder like she was scared someone was watching. Jake started to keep a list on his phone. Monday, hoodie guy takes box. Wednesday, new boxes arrive. Friday, Karen hides stuff. He wasn't trying to be a detective, but he couldn't help it. Something was going on, and his drone was catching it all. Karen didn't slow down either. She kept complaining about Jake's drone, telling everyone it was a problem. She even put up a sign in her yard that said, "No drones allowed." Jake thought it was kind of funny, but it also made him nervous. The more Karen complained, the more he wondered if she was trying to keep him from seeing something. Was she worried about his drone because of those boxes, or was it something bigger? Jake didn't want to jump to crazy ideas. Maybe Karen was just selling old stuff like clothes or books. But why all the sneaking? Why the late-night cars? His gut told him Karen was hiding something important, and the more she yelled about his drone, the more curious he got. He wasn't sure what he'd find next, but he knew one thing. His little drone was starting to shine a light on something Karen wanted to keep in the dark. It was a quiet night in Sunny Hills, and Jake Miller was out in his backyard doing what he loved most, flying his little drone. The sky was dark, with stars twinkling like tiny lights, and his drone's red and blue glow zipped around, capturing cool pictures. Jake was minding his own business, steering the drone carefully so it stayed over his yard. He didn't want any trouble, especially not with Karen, the grumpy HOA president who hated his drone. But trouble was about to find him anyway, and it was going to be a night nobody would forget. Jake was focused on his controller when he heard a loud sound, wee-oo, wee-oo, sirens. His heart started pounding like a drum. He looked up and saw red and blue lights flashing at the end of the street. Police cars, 2 of them rolled into the cul-de-sac, their tires crunching on the road. Jake's stomach dropped. "Oh no," he whispered. Did Karen really call the cops? He'd been so careful lately, keeping his drone low and quiet. But Karen had threatened to call 911 before, and now it looked like she'd actually done it. Jake took a deep breath and landed his drone on the grass. He could see Karen standing on her front lawn, 3 houses down, waving her arms like she was directing traffic. Even in the dark, he could tell she was mad. Her voice cut through the night, sharp and loud. "That's him," she yelled, pointing at Jake's drone as it sat on the ground. "He's the one with that awful machine. He's spying on us all." Jake's cheeks got hot. Spying? He wasn't spying on anyone. He just liked taking pictures of the sky and his dog Max, but Karen was making it sound like he was some kind of bad guy. The neighbors were starting to peek out their windows, and Jake felt like everyone was staring at him. He didn't want to look like a troublemaker, so he grabbed his drone and walked toward the police cars. He figured he'd explain everything calmly. It was just a toy after all. How much trouble could he really be in? The police cars were parked right in front of Karen's house, their lights flashing bright. Two officers stood on the sidewalk, one tall with a notepad, the other shorter with a serious face. Jake took a step closer, ready to talk, but before he could say a single word, the tall officer held up his hand. "Hold on, sir," he said, looking right at Jake. "We're not here for you." Jake froze. Not here for him. He blinked, confused. If the cops weren't here because of his drone, then why were they here? He looked at Karen, expecting her to keep yelling about how bad he was. But something weird happened. Karen's face changed. Her big, smug grin, the one she always had when she thought she was winning, disappeared. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked scared. The shorter officer turned to Karen, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am," he said, "we need to talk about those packages in your backyard." Karen's eyes got huge, like two big marbles. Her face went pale, almost white, even in the glow of the police lights. What packages?" she stammered, her voice all shaky. She took a step back, clutching her phone like it could save her. The tall officer didn't even blink. "The ones your neighbors reported," he said. "Stolen goods, ma'am. We've been watching you for weeks." He pointed toward Karen's backyard, where Jake knew those piles of boxes were hidden behind the shed. Jake's jaw dropped so low it almost hit the ground. Stolen goods, Karen, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. All this time, Karen had been yelling at him about his drone, calling it dangerous, saying he was the problem. But now the cops were saying she was the one doing something wrong. Jake's head was spinning. He looked at Karen, then at the officers, then back at Karen. What was going on? Karen tried to talk again. I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice squeaky. "There's nothing in my backyard. You've got the wrong person." But the officers didn't look convinced. The tall one pulled out his notepad and started reading. "Packages from online stores delivered to houses all over town, but never making it to their owners. Sound familiar?" Karen shook her head so fast her glasses almost fell off. "No, that's not me. I'm the HOA president. I keep this neighborhood perfect." But the shorter officer just raised an eyebrow. "We got a tip," he said, "and we've got proof. Want to explain those boxes we found back there?" Jake's heart was racing now. Boxes, the ones he'd seen with his drone, all those late-night flights when he'd caught glimpses of piles behind Karen's shed, cars pulling up and sneaky people grabbing stuff. He hadn't known what it meant at the time. He thought maybe Karen was just messy or selling old things. But now it was starting to make sense. His drone hadn't just been filming sunsets or Max chasing his tail. It had accidentally caught Karen doing something super shady. The tall officer kept talking. "We've had complaints about stolen packages for months," he said. "People order stuff online, clothes, toys, even dog food, and it never shows up. Turns out someone's been grabbing them before they get to the right houses. And those packages, they're piling up right here." He nodded toward Karen's backyard again. Jake couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Wait a second," he said, stepping forward. "My drone, I saw boxes back there. I didn't know what they were, but I saw them." He felt a little nervous talking to the cops, but he had to tell the truth. "I wasn't spying, I promise. I was just flying my drone and the camera caught stuff." The shorter officer looked at Jake, his face softening a bit. "You got video?" he asked. Jake nodded fast. "Yeah, I save everything on my computer. I can show you." The officer gave a small smile. "That might help a lot, kid." Karen's face went from pale to red. "He's lying," she shouted, pointing at Jake. "He's making it up. That drone is the problem, not me." But nobody was listening to her anymore. The neighbors were coming out now, standing on their lawns, whispering to each other. Jake could hear bits of it. "Karen, really? I knew something was fishy." The tall officer walked toward Karen's gate. "Ma'am, let's take a look," he said. Karen tried to block him, waving her arms. "You can't go in there, this is my house." But the shorter officer gently moved her aside. "We've got a warrant," he said, holding up a piece of paper. "Step back, please." Jake stood there holding his drone, watching it all unfold. He couldn't believe it. Karen had been so mean, telling everyone he was the bad guy when she was the one hiding a big secret. His little drone, the thing she hated most, had caught her red-handed without him even trying. It was like the drone was a superhero, shining a light on the truth. The night was wild, and Jake Miller could hardly believe what had just happened. The police officers were leading Karen to their car, their flashing lights painting the street red and blue. Karen's face was all scrunched up like she'd eaten a sour lemon. She wasn't yelling anymore, she just looked mad and scared. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, some even stepping onto their porches to see what was going on. Jake stood in his front yard, holding his little drone, his heart still racing. His drone, the thing Karen had screamed about for weeks, had helped catch her doing something really bad. And Jake hadn't even meant to do it. The cops had found piles of stolen packages in Karen's backyard, stuff she'd taken from all over town. Things like toys, clothes, and even dog treats that people had ordered online. Karen thought nobody would notice, but Jake's drone had seen it all by accident. Now she was in big trouble, and Jake felt like his whole world had turned upside down in a good way. The next morning, Sunny Hills was buzzing with talk. Jake woke up to his phone dinging like crazy. The neighborhood group chat was going wild. "Did you hear about Karen?" someone wrote. "She got caught stealing." Another neighbor typed, "No way, she's not HOA president anymore." Jake read the messages, his eyes wide. Karen was out of the HOA, for good. He couldn't help but grin a little. After all her mean notes and glares, it felt good to know the truth had come out. Jake didn't want to be a bragger, though. He wasn't the kind of guy to rub it in. He just went about his day, taking Max for a walk and fixing a squeaky wheel on his bike. But inside, he was happy. No more worrying about Karen banging on his door or leaving notes about his drone. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he could relax. Around noon, there was a knock at Jake's door. He opened it and saw Ms. Lopez, a friendly lady who lived down the street. She had a big smile and carried a basket of muffins. "Hey Jake," she said, "I'm the new HOA president and I wanted to say hi." Jake blinked, surprised. "New president already?" Ms. Lopez kept talking. "I heard about what happened with Karen. That drone of yours, it's pretty cool. You caught something nobody else saw." Jake felt his cheeks get warm. "I didn't mean to," he said, scratching his head. "I was just flying it for fun." Ms. Lopez laughed. "Well, you did a good thing. Maybe you can show us how that drone works sometime. I bet the kids would love it." Jake smiled big. "Yeah, I'd like that," he said. For the first time in forever, he felt like he really belonged in Sunny Hills.